So welcome everybody to this morning's session on virtual internships. I think this is the last one that we're doing on this topic. So welcome. You may well have joined us on previous webinars that we've run before, or this might be your first time joining us. Either way, welcome. So some brief introductions if you haven't met us before. I'm Sophie, I'm MD here at SRS. We work with employers and universities within graduate recruitment and employability. So for employers, we design their assessment materials and we support them in the recruitment of graduates. And we also work with universities to do all sorts of employability things. We're most well known with the universities for running large-scale assessment centre simulations. On top of that, I wrote the book From Learner to Earner, which our first webinar series was based upon. And you can see my various social media handles there. I'd love to connect with you if we're not already connected. So you can pick your platform of choice and hopefully we can connect. And yeah, that's me. Helen, do you want to?
Yeah, so I'm the University Partnerships Manager for SRS. I work alongside Sophie, running these webinars, workshops, assessment centres. I really hope you find this webinar useful and that you feel obliged to look at our YouTube channel, check out some of our other webinars. We've got some new ones coming. And as Sophie said, feel free to link in with me, link in with us and ask us any follow-up questions there. That'd be great.
Fab. And Helen is running today's session, so I am going to be on questions. So if you've got any questions, do participate by asking questions or sharing any thoughts. You can do this using the chat function. If you can set it to all panelists and all attendees, which is not the default option, so you do have to change it, then it means that everyone can see your comment or your question. So feel free to keep me busy in the old chat function. If you want to just pop your phone on to mute or put it out of the way, just so we can keep your attention throughout the session. And then finally, just make use of the tools available. So we will refer to some resources, I think, at the end. So make most of them. But also, we keep saying it, and we won't get tired of saying it either, but do make use of your careers service. Whether you're still at university or whether you've graduated, you'll still have access to the service. They are doing some wonderful things right now. They will be working with employers on virtual internships. They'll probably be advertising them. So yeah, talk to them, see what they're offering remotely right now and make most of it.
Brilliant, thanks Sophie.
I'll hand over to you now and just be ready for all these questions.
Thank you, yeah, keep Sophie busy. So you'll see from the agenda that we're going to cover what's the value in virtual internships, what are the different types, what do they usually involve, what are the challenges and opportunities, and what are the do's and don'ts. But before we begin, I'm just going to see if I can launch a little poll, just to get a bit of an understanding, to see how many of you have actually completed a virtual internship or have applied. So hopefully you should have a poll appear up on your screen, and if you could just respond to those questions, that would be brilliant. I'll just give you a couple of moments there. Great stuff. Brilliant, that's almost all of you there have responded. That's fantastic, thank you. So I'll just share the results with you on the screen there. So just to see how many of you have completed a virtual internship. So just 4 of you on today's webinar, so 13%. Have you applied for a virtual internship? 9 of you have. Great stuff, that's very good to hear. And do you understand what's involved as part of a virtual internship? 9 of you do, 28%. Well, that's good. I'm hoping to build on your understanding. And also for those of you who don't, hopefully you'll get quite a bit of information from this webinar. That's brilliant. So thank you for completing that. You may need to just click the cross and close the pop-up box, just so that you can see the main screen behind. Okay. So why is it important to look for these virtual internship opportunities? So previous surveys completed by the Institute of Student Employers have shown that at least 50% of their employer respondents said a lack of work experience meant that graduates had little or no chance of securing a role with them. And a similar survey conducted in 2019 showed that 87% of these employers agreed that students who'd completed an internship had much better skills than those who did not have this experience. And so this data really confirms that securing an internship will develop your skills, your connections, and also give you a valuable opportunity in which to explore different industries and roles. So what is an internship? It's a period of work experience, and it may take the form of a summer work placement of 4 to 10 weeks, or there may be some longer 6 or 12-month opportunities. Typically, you'll be expected to work between 20 to 30 hours a week. As part of that internship, you gain an insight into how the company works, and it could lead to further placements or the opportunity to secure a graduate role. Now, the recent pandemic has meant that some organisations have cancelled their internships. However, some have actually redesigned them. And no matter whether it's a virtual, online or remote internship, they all offer that same valuable opportunity in which to complete work experience from home. So let's look at the different types. So project-based internships are very popular at the moment, and they range from global projects to business projects that are aligned to a specific department or area. Now, typically, these projects will try to appeal to a broad range of skills, such as the ability to complete research, write reports, and interpret data. They give students a lot of autonomy and the opportunity to really own the outcome of that project. There's lots of employers who have switched from longer internships to short virtual schemes, with the aim of following this up with actual work shadowing later in the year. Now, I've seen quite a few examples of these, and they typically last around 3 days, where employers run skills-based workshops or learning modules that culminate in project work or case study sessions where candidates have to report back. One of the best examples that springs to mind most recently was the Internship Experience UK, and this was a collaboration of 100 employers to create a series of 3-day programs across 6 business areas. But there are lots of other virtual schemes that employers are offering out there. Now, although these types of internships can be short and sweet, there's some definite advantages to them. So typically there'll be lots of other students involved, and it's important to see the value of networking with not just employers, but also your peers. So students from a range of different backgrounds who can all share their experiences with each other. As part of the Q&A sessions within these internships, alongside the employers, students have actually been answering each other's questions and using it as a forum to alert each other to opportunities and giving each other feedback. These relationships have continued outside of the internship programme, and as a result, students have significantly increased their networks and their online presence just by engaging with fellow students. Now, although strictly speaking, this isn't a full virtual internship, a lot of organisations are also offering online modules, about 3 to 5 hours long, based around a project or hypothetical situation. Now, these will usually involve pre-recorded instructions with an opportunity to upload your work and compare to model answers. These types of modules help you to understand company frameworks and usually give you a certificate, which is further evidence for your CV. And again, it's worth exploring. One I looked at recently, there was a really good one for KPMG, but again, there's lots of other big organisations offering these. Of course, some virtual internships still reflect what would have been done as part of in-person work experience in the office. And this is where you'd be working on day-to-day tasks, initially supporting the team in a junior support role. The nature of these tasks will depend on the role and the organisation. So let's now hear from Helen Sherwood, who is the University Placement Scheme Lead for the IBM UK Foundation. So Helen talks about the different types of internships that they've had to offer.
So a broad overview of what IBM internships have to offer. So our virtual schemes are obviously new this year. We have 2 programs, Extreme Blue, that's a 12-week summer internship for technology and design students. You work with a small team You look at a business challenge, you find a solution, and if you find the right one, we'll take it forward. Our year-long internships are roles in many areas, from HR through to software development, working on everything from a client project through to AI innovation. The work can be really varied, and it's a challenge throughout the year. The roles all have a set description, but each student is encouraged to bring innovation and passion to get the most out of their role, and also to challenge us. You know, you're coming to us with great new ideas. We want you to get involved in other areas as well if you've got scope. So once you've done the day job and you're good at it, then please reach out, look at things that you're interested in and how to develop your own personal learning and maybe career options as well.
Thanks to Helen there. We'll be hearing a bit more from her later. Now, whether it's a 3-day virtual scheme or longer term project work, virtual internships can include some or all of the following. So there could be a mix of live or pre-recorded sessions, virtual breakout rooms with Q&As with key employees in the business, networking sessions, or community groups where you can also interact with your peers. Online meetings with your supervisor or mentor, virtual tours of the organisation, training opportunities, usually via an e-learning platform, and lots of online socialising events, such as Zoom pizza nights and so on. Either way, the employer will always aim to give you a meaningful experience that helps to develop your skills. So how will your performance be measured? As you'd expect, there will be formal reviews, usually supplemented with pastoral support, and there'll be feedback from your supervisor. And secondly, a lot of self-reflection tools are being used to assess interns, such as certain apps and video diaries that allow you to demonstrate and record what you've learned throughout your internship. Employers are also using digital platforms to track engagement with modules, such as what sessions interns take part in and for how long they log on. Finally, and particularly if there's a chance of a job offer at the end of it, the internship might finish with a final interview, presentation exercise, or some form of assessment centre. Let's move on to talk about some of the challenges that you might encounter as part of a virtual internship. Now, clearly, you're going to need a laptop and a good internet connection, which is not always a given. Now, if you're someone who needs support in this area, some employers may actually provide you with equipment, and some universities have access to grants and funding that can also help individual students in this area. It can be a challenge to structure your day, as although some employers will provide you with detailed schedules and timelines, you may be left to your own devices to work within the parameters of a project, for example. This does, however, present you with a real opportunity to improve your time management and self-discipline. Working from home in any role can be a difficult transition, as it can mean a shift from a work-life balance to a work-life integration, where your home becomes your office and you're always switched on. So it's about how you manage those breaks and how you switch off. Your work ethic can also be its own challenge, because less supervision means that there's no one to stop you from over-delivering or spending too much time on work. Further challenges revolve around the personal aspect, where it can be harder to create relationships and build a rapport online. Within a virtual environment, it takes more time and effort to make those personal connections, which would develop more naturally if you're in a team office environment. Look at ways in which you can let your personality shine, how you use your body language, tone of voice, and maybe a sense of humour to show your enthusiasm. You should also remember that working at home means that your colleagues can't see when you're struggling, and so you need to be even more proactive about asking for help. So what are some of the advantages to virtual internships? Well, there's lots. It's still a very valuable opportunity in which to gain work experience. It will allow you to develop your remote working skills, and going forward, there's going to be an increased demand for people with remote work experience. In a lot of ways, it's a much more accessible opportunity, and it gives you the chance to work with a global company, make international connections, and not have to relocate. And virtual internships can also sometimes be more flexible with regards to your working hours. You'll also be able to develop your tech and communication skills. It will prompt you to be more flexible and agile in your approach going forward. And as we've already mentioned, it will improve your self-discipline and time management skills with regards to how you structure your day. We're now going to look at some top tips and what you should do as part of a virtual internship. And we're going to hear some more from Helen Sherwood at IBM with her thoughts on this.
Top tips for students during a virtual internship: be present. As I said earlier, you might be invited to a WebEx session at the drop of a hat. You never know who's going to be on that session. So pitch up like you would day one in the office, bright and shiny. Make sure your background's appropriate, and if possible, and your background isn't great, then maybe you want to download a virtual one, just to make sure that nobody's spying, people moving in the background, distractions off screen. Try and be your very best professional self at all times. It's hard for people to see what you're doing, so make sure that you keep a good note of all your achievements and you communicate them. Sometimes we have road bumps along the way, so for every single one of those little worries that you have, make sure you talk about them, because normally you just turn your head and have a chat saying, I did this wrong, what should I do? Still use your network, still make sure that you use other people to support you all the way through. Just be on all the time, I think, open to opportunities, and just use all of those available resources to you. Learn about other things, ask so many questions. Make sure that you always remember the answer, so you're not asking the same question time and time again. But be open-minded. You might suddenly learn about new careers that you'd never ever considered before. So ask questions. Everybody always loves talking about their own career journeys, and they're normally willing to share. So just keep asking questions.
Thanks to Helen there. So let's now look at what you should do as part of a virtual internship. And I just want to take it back a step and remind you to really research the opportunity before you commit to it. This is because there's a lot of bogus ones out there, and make sure you establish whether or not it's a paid opportunity. And that's not to say you shouldn't look at unpaid alternatives, just make sure you know what you're going into. Having researched the opportunity, it'll be good to give your employer an idea of your key strengths and development areas, as they may be able to tailor projects to your natural preferences. And you should definitely establish your expectations in terms of how much direct contact there will be and how often you'll get feedback. Definitely get yourself a mentor. With you not being able to bounce ideas off colleagues sitting near to you in the office, it's even more important to have an informal mentor or buddy who you can share your experiences with and ask for advice. Create a dedicated workspace. Now, I know this might be difficult if you're in shared accommodation, for example, but do what you can to create a professional, distraction-free environment where everything you need is to hand. Implement a routine that replicates the working hours of your employers, such as setting clear start and finish times. And try and coincide your breaks with others so that you can join virtual coffee catch-ups. You might be used to the flexibility of working whenever and wherever, but it's a good idea to try and get into a similar working routine to your colleagues. Ensure that you follow up with your manager about reviews of your performance. If they don't arrange these meetings, then ask for them and seek feedback at appropriate stages. And finally, keep records of what you've been working on. Log your achievements. That way they'll be easy to recall when you get to your performance review. I've just seen someone there who raised their hand for a question. If I could just remind you to use Zoom chat, and Sophie will pick up on your comments there, that would be great. Be honest and upfront about what you can and can't do. Now, with remote working, we've talked about how it's harder to spot when someone is struggling or needs help. Therefore, you do have to speak up that bit more and be very clear about how you're feeling and progressing with your work. Ask lots of questions, speak up, get your ideas across. And it could be that you don't just do this in virtual meetings, but through online communities, groups and apps. Use all the resources available to you. In terms of the work itself, get prepared for meetings by completing advanced research on any relevant topics. Prioritise your tasks and check those priorities with others to make sure that you're on the right track, particularly as it might be more difficult for someone to see what you're focusing on. And as with any role, be resilient. A very important quality required even more so by employers at the moment, and one we'll be talking about in a later webinar. And finally, be proactive in meeting and learning from others, one that Helen Sherwood was talking quite a bit about. Your attendance might be mandatory at some meetings, but you could ask to be involved in others. There might be other people in the organisation you could approach to have a chat about the culture or things they're working on. Organise virtual catch-ups outside of the normal meetings, and definitely get involved in any social events. What you should not do as part of virtual internships. Don't just think of it as work experience. This is an amazing opportunity to demonstrate your skills and make some great connections. Even if there isn't the opportunity of a job offer at the end of it, you might be able to get a reference, or they may be so impressed that they come back to you when they're actually recruiting. Don't make assumptions because something seems similar to what you've done before. Always clarify and check your understanding. Don't waste time. If you're not given much to work on, then be proactive about finding training or projects that you can get involved with. And as we've said before, your manager will not easily be able to tell when you're struggling. And so don't worry in silence. Let them know when you need help. Communicate more rather than less, and let your manager know in advance if you need more time rather than miss a deadline. I want to share some further insights with you from a recent graduate. So Megan had a placement scheme lined up for the summer and it got postponed. But despite this setback, she went on to seek out and get involved with 3 other internships, from which she's also going to share her top tips.
Firstly, I'd go and suggest treating it like a proper internship. Don't just go and passively listen. Go and actively listen and take as much out of the webinars and talks as you possibly can. If getting given tasks, even if they're not marked at the end of it, as was the case with my Legal Cheek internship, then still go and do them to the best of your ability. You choose what you get out of these internships. So by going and treating it as if it's a real one, you'll absorb the most out of the opportunity and be going and learning as much as you can from the internship. Secondly, I'd advise you to go and make the most of meeting new people and networking through the internship. Prior to both my Bright Network and Legal Cheek internship, I went and saw that lots of people were making group chats on WhatsApp, and they went and posted it on LinkedIn. So I went and took that opportunity to go and meet new people in this environment and go and chat to people that I wouldn't be able to go and meet in person due to the current situation. And it was very beneficial. It was really helpful to have someone to go through the internship with, to go and talk about tasks and talks and go and get different perspectives on the different things that we are being set. But also I'm happy to go and say that I've remained friends with some of them, and we help each other out by sharing opportunities and webinars and tips when we find them and come across them. And meeting new people is invaluable to be able to talk about not only the internship in front of you, but also in the future for that future support. Thirdly, I personally kept a sticky pad next to my desk, and whenever I came across something in the internship that I didn't quite understand fully, I wanted to know more about, or something that interested me, I jotted it down and used the internship as a springboard to go and further my knowledge on areas that I wasn't too sure about, that I had no idea about but intrigued me. Like, for example, in one of the internships we talk about mergers and acquisitions. I can personally go and say I didn't really know much about it other than the basics, and now because of that I've went and sought out webinars and more information and lectures and courses that I could go and possibly expand my knowledge and go and really in depth know the sector that I'm wanting to go into. And then finally I'd go and say, even if it's not in the field that you are currently studying in, if the opportunity is presented to you and it interests you and it's something that you potentially could go into, then I'd suggest going and trying it out. I met many people while networking on both my Legal Cheek and Bright Network internships that were non-law students, even though it was a commercial law internship. And that was because they wanted to go and see whether this was the right fit for them. They wanted to go and see whether they were thinking of doing the conversion course. And it was to go and expand their knowledge. It's an easy way to go and get involved without fully committing to that area. I know many people that were also law students that went and took part in finance internships, technology internships, and were pleasantly surprised afterwards that these were areas that they'd potentially go into as a future career. So therefore, if you have the opportunity presented to you and it is something that you think that you would be interested in and you're eligible for, just give it a go.
Thanks very much to Megan there. So Megan shared some great insights with us, and I just wanted to draw out and emphasise the point she made about being proactive both before and after your internship. So in the run-up to your internship, you should really research what's involved and get to grips with any agendas or itineraries. You might have some questions to ask before you actually start. If it's quite a broad internship, there may be the opportunity to explore different roles and areas. And as Megan says, think outside of the box and be open-minded to roles that might not be directly related to your degree. If possible, you should also find out who's involved and network with them. There may already be online communities that you can join, but you could also take the initiative and set one up yourself. When your internship ends, it's important to take time and reflect on what you've learned. Use this as a springboard to help focus your learning going forwards. Identify your next steps and look at further courses and opportunities that you can get involved with. You must also maintain your network and relationships with the people you met as part of that experience. I also wanted to draw out a great quote from Megan. Take this time to become the best candidate you can be and give employers no reason to say no to you. Create your own opportunities and reach out to those being offered to you. Now, there are a number of organisations offering virtual internships, and be aware that some universities are also running their own virtual internship schemes, so it's definitely worth speaking to your career service. But if you are unsuccessful getting an internship, you can still be proactive, a word we keep coming back to, and be productive over the coming months. There's lots of volunteering opportunities and online courses which will help to develop your skills and provide evidence of your key abilities. You could also use the time to work on your online presence, affecting that LinkedIn profile and making sure it conveys your personal brand. And again, we're going to be covering this topic in an upcoming webinar. Get yourself prepared and ready for questions from employers about how you responded to the recent crisis and what you did with the time. I'm going to close with another quick video from student Jack Pink, who really emphasises the need to treat any type of internship as real work experience.
Hi, I'm Jack. I'm a current undergraduate psychology student transitioning to law, and I've recently done a load of different virtual experiences, internships, opportunities, things like that, to replace the ones that we've missed because of COVID-19. And I found them really, really useful, not just in terms of getting the information and the practical skills and the experience that you would get with the traditional ones, but they also just show you're really committed and you're dedicated and you're someone who's outgoing and will go and find those opportunities to better themselves as an individual. And recruiters want to see that sort of thing. So I'm transitioning to law, and that's a really competitive industry. And so you really have to find ways to set yourself apart. What I've been doing is basically just treating these days like a 9 till 5, but they typically end up going a lot later than that because it's law. And like, you genuinely enjoy some of the things that you do. And so you just want to keep working on them because you feel them making such a difference. And so I've found even just treating it like a real thing as much as possible. So getting there at 9 o'clock, working a normal sort of time, having a 1 hour break in the middle of it, and then just, wearing a suit, wearing formal business attire while you're doing it. And just the more you put in is really the more you get out of it. And so I just recommend going in and doing as much as you can and seeing what you can get done.
Thanks to Jack there. So before we wrap up and have a look to see if we've got any questions, I just wanted to trouble you to do another quick poll, if that's okay. Bear with me a second there. So just a couple of questions that hopefully pop up on your screen, just to gauge whether we've helped with your understanding of what's involved as part of a virtual internship. And will you be applying? Give you a couple of moments there. Okay, so I think I've got most of you responding, I think there. Well, that's fantastic. So 31 of you have basically all of you have done the poll, have said that you have got a better understanding of virtual internship. Thank you, that's really good to know. It makes me feel better pulling this webinar together, knowing that it has helped. And yeah, 29 of you are going to be applying for virtual internships. That's fantastic. Just show you the results there on the screen. So I'll just hand you back to Sophie there, just to wrap up and follow up on any questions that we may have had.
Thanks, Helen. So we've just had a couple of questions that are the same, actually. So where's best to search for these opportunities? You got any thoughts on that, Helen?
Yeah, so to be honest, there's various different websites out there, and I've spoken to a few employers about internships, and I've got to be honest, the best place to look for them is directly on their websites, because even if they're not offering the longer ones that last a few months or weeks, on their websites they have these online courses and they have these 3-day opportunities. So I would start there, and definitely a career service as well, which I know we've mentioned on the resources page. So one of the things we've mentioned there as well is Prospects Luminate, which some of you may have heard of, but it's a great website which has lots of articles and research to help students with navigating the graduate labour market. But it also has a list and links to employers who are offering virtual internships as well. So it's definitely a website to explore. Off the top of my head, there's another website as well that's been recently, when I say recently, created in lockdown by employers and various institutions to support students and graduates. And again, it's called Next Step Support. And again, that has a lot of useful information in general about what's going on at the moment, but it can also signpost you to some virtual internship opportunities as well.
And we've got another question there, Helen, about are you aware of any internships specifically within the healthcare field?
I'm afraid not. It's not a sector I've particularly delved into, I've got to be honest. I imagine there would be, and I know that the NHS has been, obviously been very busy. There's been a lot of voluntary programs that have been offered, but I'm sorry, I haven't got the detail on that one.
Then there's another question that's come through. I'm not sure if I totally understand it, but I'll read it out and hopefully you will, Helen. But it's the question. They have a question about the importance employers place on the open access learning modules.
Open access. So do you mean in terms of the modules where you get a certificate? I think that's probably what you mean. So just the one that I've looked at most recently that KPMG do, which is a virtual module, where you get a certificate from that. From what I've gathered, I mean, if it's employer branded and if it's run by quite a renowned employer like that, then it is going to count for something on your CV, and it's certainly a talking point in any interviews about what you learned from that module. Any kind of certified qualification, any evidence from an employer that you've completed a module or a qualification is going to help, definitely.
Mm-hmm. And then a couple of final questions there before I point out the resources. So someone's saying they're interested in internships in accounting, and someone else saying internships in law that are not commercial law internships, so specifically litigation they're interested in.
Yeah, it's going to be areas you'd have to research. I'm afraid I can't give you specifics on companies in particular sectors, I'm afraid.
The career service are really good with that, because what you'll find with your career services is that they have specific careers consultants for different departments. So they will be well versed in what specific areas are doing. So I think
I would definitely start with your career service. And I mean, if you've got any particular organisations in mind, yeah, definitely look at their websites. But the guys in your career services all across the country, again, I've had so many chats with them as well as employers, and they've put so much time and effort into setting up relationships with employers, to enhancing them, to creating these work experience opportunities. You'd be mad not to talk to them first, because it might save you quite a bit of legwork.
Definitely, and we have obviously put the career service there as a resource. There's also a link there to my book, which you can see there, which is very helpful.
Yeah,
an internship.
brilliant.
And then there's also the link to the Prospects Luminate article, which is worth a read. I'm just checking in the questions, see if there's anything finally. Again, sort of a question there about a specific field, so internships within international relations. I think the same advice would apply. So Catherine's asking, is it worth emailing specific companies to ask if they have any upcoming opportunities?
Yeah, I think it is. There's actually probably not enough of this at the moment in terms of just reaching out to organisations to see what they can offer you or what you can help them with. I definitely encourage you to do that rather than just sitting and waiting for opportunities to come up. You do want to make sure that you tailor your approach to every organisation. So don't just send out a generic, this is me, have you got an internship? You want to say, oh, I've been looking at your organisation and what you're working on looks very interesting. I could perhaps help with this. So yeah, again, do a bit of homework on organisations you'd like to approach. And yeah, I would definitely reach out to them, be proactive.
There's one other question that I just missed that was a bit further up, which was, do you know if this structure of internships is the same in more free-flowing art and design sectors?
I haven't spoken to many employers in that sector, I've got to be honest, but on the whole, out of all the industries I have had contact with, they're all using very similar technology, they're all using very similar platforms and formats. So it does tend to be those shorter virtual internship schemes or the longer programs which kind of recreate what you would have been doing if you were on site. So in terms of the flow and the makeup of them, I mean, a lot of these employers across industries are sharing best practice anyway about what they're doing. So there is a lot of commonality between them. So as part of this webinar, it was to draw your attention to the similarities between the different internships. So yes, I would say that arguably they'd be very similar.
Great. Okay. Well, there's just some final social media handles there for SRS. So give us a follow if you're not already. We have got a number of other webinars that we're doing over the next couple of weeks. So we've got developing your presence as the next topic, and also a session on the skills employers are looking for and how to demonstrate these. And we've also got a rerun of series 1, which you can also catch recorded versions over on the YouTube channel. There is one more question there. Could you offer one top tip to university students in terms of employability? Ooh, well, I know what mine would be to go to get involved with season 1 of our webinars, because we literally cover every element of the process. So I would say, prepare yourself as much as possible, so that when you're applying for jobs and meeting with employers, it's not the first, your first experience. You've had a bit of a practice run. What would you say, Helen?
It's such a difficult question, because I'd struggle to identify what the most important top tip is, because there's 2 or 3 I'd probably pull out. I mean, it would, I know I've been banging on about it a bit already, but it is about being proactive with the time that you've got available to you. And my second one would be around resilience, which we're going to talk about in a later webinar, because you guys, I'm conscious that there is a lot of challenges ahead for you, and there's a lot of possible setbacks in terms of how many applications you're going to have to make and so on, but it's how you overcome that, how you draw from it and use it. I suppose if you had to pin me down to one top tip, so in terms of preparing for applying to employers and selling yourself, just look back at your experience and think of 4 or 5 things. They might be key achievements, qualifications and so on, or they might just be being a carer or being part of a football team. And just think about that experience and the skills that you can draw out of it and how it matches to the skills that employers are looking for. It's something that I'm going to be talking about going forward, but from all the graduates and students I've spoken to over the years, a lot of them fail to pick up on some very important skills from what they perceive to be just everyday experience. When actually looking after your parents or managing a difficult work-life balance, they actually, you can draw things like organisation and prioritisation out of that, and teamwork. So it's having those key examples, those key skills to hand and being able to talk about them.
Great. Well, it was lovely to have a flurry of questions there at the end. So thanks very much for your attention, for staying on till the end there, and for all those wonderful questions. Hopefully we'll catch you on a future webinar. We'd love to hear your feedback. If you do decide to do any posts about the series or this session, then please do tag us in it and connect with us.